Welcome back, everyone. I'm Daniel, the Culinary Chemist Dad, and today, well, we're heading back into the lab. And by lab, I mean the kitchen. We've got a brand new explainer for you, and we're diving deep into the exact science behind the absolute ultimate homemade corn fritter. Because, when you actually understand the chemistry of what's happening in your pan, you completely stop guessing and you start cooking with absolute confidence. Let's get into it.
I want you to imagine that sound. You know the one. That aggressive, crackling hiss right when a scoop of batter hits a pool of hot oil. Now that sizzle isn't just a sound effect. It's a violent, beautiful chemical reaction just proudly announcing itself to the world. Literally right before our eyes, a pale, sticky dough is about to transform into a golden, crispy, incredibly complex flavor matrix. And we're going to break down every single reaction that makes that magic possible.
All right, Section 1, the anatomy of a fritter.
So here is our ingredient manifest. We're looking at 2 ears of fresh corn, 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a half cup of cottage cheese, 1 egg, a tablespoon of baking powder, 4 tablespoons of melted butter, a 1/4 cup of maple syrup, 3/4 of a cup of whole milk, and some extra light olive oil for frying. Now, we aren't just throwing these things in a bowl and crossing our fingers. We're using these specific items, like the fresh corn and cottage cheese, for very, very precise scientific reasons.
Moving right along to Section 2, Sugar and Starch Chemistry. Okay, here's something absolutely fascinating. It's called the sugar-starch transition system. See, the literal second an ear of corn is harvested, an enzymatic reaction kicks off. The naturally high levels of sucrose inside the kernels start converting into glucose, fructose, and eventually just plain, bland starch. This is exactly why you absolutely must use fresh corn on the very day you buy it. You are literally in a race against a chemical clock to capture that maximum natural sucrose sweetness before it flatlines into pure starch. And hey, here's a crucial chef's trick for you. Once you cut those kernels off, take the back of your knife and scrape the cob. You're going to extract this opaque, milky liquid we call, well, corn milk. Do not throw this away. Seriously. It adds essential moisture, pure sweetness, and dissolved starch granules straight into our batter. It acts as an incredible natural thickener and flavor enhancer.
Let's jump to Section 3, the binding team. So let's look at the division of labor between our wet ingredients. Think of cottage cheese as our moisture and tenderness engine. See, cottage cheese is roughly 70% water. When it hits that hot oil, the water rapidly flashes to steam, pushing the batter upward and creating an incredibly tender interior. The egg, on the flip side, is our structure builder. Its proteins denature and coagulate under the high heat, giving the fritter a cohesive, firm body and contributing to a much richer crust.
The really crucial point here is how the egg pulls everything together on a molecular level. Hidden right inside the egg yolk is a phospholipid called lecithin. Lecithin is an emulsifier, so think of it as a microscopic peacekeeper. It's holding hands with both the fat from our butter and the water from our milk, literally forcing them to get along and form a perfectly stable batter. Meanwhile, the ovalbumin in the egg white is busy acting as our structural scaffolding the moment the heat hits.
Now, a quick but super important warning from your Culinary Chemist Dad. Make absolutely sure your melted butter is fully cooled before you mix it in. If you pour hot butter directly onto a raw egg, you will instantly denature those proteins. You'll literally end up scrambling the egg right there in your raw batter. So, cool the butter, save the structure.
All right, Section 4, the physics of frying. When we finally combine our wet and dry ingredients together, we're bringing water into contact with the flour's proteins, specifically glutenin and gliadin. This creates a gluten network. And listen, we want to gently fold this batter, not beat it to death. Overmixing develops way too much gluten. If you do that, instead of a tender, melt-in-your-mouth fritter, you're going to end up with a chewy, tough hockey puck. So just fold it gently until it barely comes together. We're also relying pretty heavily on baking powder here, which gives us a 2-stage chemical lift. Stage 1 happens the literal second the powder touches the wet milk and egg. It immediately releases carbon dioxide gas. But Stage 2 happens a bit later, right when the batter hits the hot oil. It releases a second massive burst of CO2. And this 2-step process is what creates those beautifully essential interior air pockets, giving us a remarkably airy crumb. As you mix all this up, you're looking for a very specific consistency. You want a slow, heavy ribbon of batter falling off your spoon. This thick texture is strictly intentional. A thin batter, it's just going to spread out flat in the oil and you'll lose all of that vertical lift we just spent time engineering. So if your batter is too thin, toss in the tablespoon of flour. If it's too thick, just add a quick splash of milk. Easy fix. Okay, now we reach the frying stage. We're using extra light olive oil because its smoke point is way up around 465 degrees Fahrenheit, which gives us plenty of buffer room. We need our oil precisely in the 350 to 375 degrees zone. If you go below 350, you're basically just steaming the batter in warm oil, which gives you a greasy, oily sponge. Gross. But above 375, the outside is going to carbonize and burn way before the heat even penetrates to cook the center.
But when you hit that perfect 350-degree sweet spot, three fascinating physics reactions happen all at once. First, the surface water immediately vaporizes, creating a pressurized outward steam barrier that physically blocks the frying oil from soaking into your food. Second, the Maillard reaction triggers, fusing amino acids and sugars to create hundreds of brown, incredibly flavorful compounds. And third, that baking powder fires its second charge, puffing the fritter right up from the inside. It's beautiful.
Section 5. The perfect crunch.
Once these beauties come out of the oil, how you drain them matters tremendously. You should always use a wire cooling rack and never, ever paper towels. Sure, a paper towel absorbs oil, but it also traps the steam escaping from the hot fritter right against the bottom. That trapped steam will instantly rehydrate and soften the crispy crust you just spent all that time carefully engineering. A wire rack, on the other hand, ensures full 360-degree airflow.
Now, we also have a bit of a secret weapon hiding in our batter: maple syrup. It doesn't just provide a wonderful, complex sweetness to contrast the savory corn, its native sugars actively amplify that Maillard reaction we were just talking about. It basically accelerates the browning process, developing these rich, caramel-adjacent flavor compounds on the crust that you can literally smell before you even take your first bite.
Which brings me to the ultimate Culinary Chemist Dad tip. Make your batter right before you fry. Do not let it sit on the counter. Remember that first stage of the baking powder reaction we discussed? If you wait around, you will burn up that vital first CO2 leavening charge before the batter ever even sees the oil. So, mix it, fry it, and don't wait around.
Just think about the final result here. Seriously, when you break one of these open, you can see the curds, the plump kernels of corn, and this absolutely perfect internal structure. It's light, it's incredibly tender, and the crunch on the outside is just flawless. This brilliantly illustrates what happens when you truly understand the underlying chemistry. It completely replaces kitchen guesswork with absolute, unwavering confidence.
Because, honestly, once you start seeing the science inside your food, you can never unsee it, and it makes cooking so much more rewarding. I really want you to think about that as you head into the kitchen tonight. What other kitchen mysteries or maybe frustrating recipes can a little bit of chemistry solve for you? I'm Daniel, the Culinary Chemist Dad. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, stay curious out there.